Hey, Nate. Okay, so thanks for asking for help. You seem like an interesting case to me, like you are my ideal case study because I'm trying to make videos that are more effective. Because I think there's a lot of people like you, like us, that have watched all the videos, and for some reason we're not getting it. So the videos aren't working. They're not effective, right? If they're not bringing up the knowledge level of the average player enough that we can figure this stuff out. So I appreciate the feedback you've already given me about your process and stuff. And maybe after all this is over, you'd be interested in hopping on a video chat and going over what I present here and tell me a little more about your process and whatnot. No worries if that doesn't sound cool, but hopefully it does. So let's jump into it. So first of all, some notes about filming. I can see that you have read your Sun Tzu, and you have put the sun at your back going into battle. Excellent. To confuse and disorient your enemies. Me being your enemy here. So all I'm saying is, if you can, like this shot is fine. We'll make it work. But if you were paying me for this review, I might ask you to use a different clip where you're not backlit because I can see less detail on your body because you're backlit. Again, for this, I think I can give you plenty of good info, but just something to be aware of when you're filming. Also, if you can, which it looks like you can because I think you have a tripod, film from 90 degrees off the T-pad. Exactly. So you're at, it's close to 30 degrees off of that. If you can film from right here, I guess film from right here so that the camera is looking right at your power pocket area. And then also, I've cropped a lot out of this. So film from 90 degrees, don't be backlit, and fill up the frame with your body. So I want the frame to be like just the end of the T-pad and just the back of the T-pad, so that you're as big as possible in the frame. That'll just give me more detail to coach from. So just little stuff, but things that come up often as a coach. I can do my job easier if you set me up for success. So that's notes on filming. Let's jump into your throw. So the first thing that stands out to me is footwork. And this was my first question, is like, what are you thinking about for your last two steps? Right? So we'll just watch it once. So that step and that step. Right? So if you've watched all the videos, you know that this doesn't work. Why does it not work? It doesn't work because both of your hips are open. So wherever you are right now, stand up, put yourself in this position. So you're a pretty tall guy, so you should have a big last stride, but I think this is too big, at least while we're learning the mechanics. This is too long, so I'd want to see your stride like maybe, well, I don't know, you're a real big dude, maybe like there. So find this position, put your feet however far apart that is, put your toes out on this, past 45 degrees angle, and then just swivel your hips forward and backward as far as you can. So turn them as far targetward as you can, and then as far backwards as you can. Note how far they go and what it feels like. Now shorten up your step by 6 or 8 inches, point your toes forwards, and point your other set of toes forwards. Now swivel your hips again. You will find, I guarantee, if you're a human and not a robot, that you can now move your hips further easier. And then I'll do you one better. Move this foot up to here so you have an offset of like toe to heel, or maybe even more. Now swivel your hips again. So now you will find you have even more range of motion. And more importantly, when you're in the front position, so I'll draw over here so as not to confuse myself or others. If your front foot is there, and your rear foot is here. When you pivot your hips all the way forward, you'll find this position where your front leg is locked out and your rear leg, your toes are up actually, so we'll draw that correctly. So your front foot is here, your toes have pivoted forward a little bit. That leg is locked out and straight. This leg, your knee will come very close to your other knee. So here's your one knee, here's your other knee, and then this foot will be kind of up on the ball. So this position is way more athletic than where you ended up when you were doing the drill here and when you were doing the drill here. All right, so this position is kind of what we want to send our rear leg into. It's not actually going to get there. The leg is going to go more behind when we're actually bracing at speed. But I just want you to be aware of that dynamic of your hips. So this is the biggest thing you're doing that's screwing you up. Your footwork is completely preventing you from using your hips the way we want you to use your hips. And it's the toes out that are doing it. So you got to get your toes to where they're 90 degrees. Brian Earhart has an excellent video. It's called X-Step Deep Dive, and he really commits firmly to the idea that your last 3 steps need to be toes 90 degrees to your target line. Your initial step and your X step should be closer together than we tend to think. And these two need to be on one rail, and this one needs to be on a separate rail, and never the two meet. Because your center of gravity is going to track down a third rail, and it's going to stay there. So if your feet get confused about what rail they're on, your center of gravity gets confused about staying on its rail too. If your center of gravity wobbles at all, then your balance wobbles, and we're playing a balanced sport. This throw is entirely about balance. Like, centimeters matter a lot more than you would think. So where you start going sideways in a bad way, that step's okay. This one is not. So like, you're a big dude, you should be able to take a big X step, but for now, chill it out a lot. Because when your step goes this far, it's gonna turn the heel forward, and we want that on a 90. A lot of the pros don't do this, but they have good hip mechanics, and they're aware that they need, if they go past 45 for whatever reason, I'm not even sure it's good, but they are aware that they have time to get their rear leg back in the position they want it in. So they'll end up in a not ideal position, they'll then fix it before it matters, and then it doesn't matter. But while you're trying to learn the mechanic, I think it's way simpler to just commit to this 90-degree angle. And Brian Earhart says the last 3 steps should be on 90, and he's pretty good. So I'm gonna go with him instead of copying a bunch of pros that throw better than me. So like, for an example, you can look at Eagle. Eagle sets up on like a similar angle to you, and he puts his heel down, which is like a huge problem according to everyone. But then before it matters, he picks it back up and gets back on the ball of his foot and dips his knee in the way that we want to see our knee dip in. So choose your own adventure there, but I'd really recommend sticking to 90. So make sure your X step is not too long, because that will tend to turn your toes too far backwards. So shorter X step, keep your toes on 90. Next point, your reach back. So the way that so like, maybe this is how I'm going to structure my videos, is just like putting myself out of work as a coach by showing people what I'm doing and how you, like, there's like a, 15 or 12 or 15 point bullet list of things that I go through and look through someone's form for. And like, once you know how to look for all of them, they're really easy to see. And it's not that common, at least at the level that people are posting videos on this site, that there are novel cases. It's the same things over and over. That's why I got frustrated with my efficiency of typing responses to people, and made a couple YouTube videos of like just the basic mistakes that I kept correcting people on over and over again. But then not enough people watch those because I'm not a YouTuber. So now we're doing videos for people, which seems to be working well, but it doesn't scale well. So working on that. So that right there was checking your reach back. So I'm just clicky pausey method, very advanced, and I just look at your arm. So now your arm is not moving, not moving, not moving, not moving. Now it's bending. So you were at peak reach back. This is not peak reach back. You're still bent. Straightening, straightening, straightening. Now you're at peak. Note your foot position. Note, I don't know my hotkeys. This is why you don't change your hotkeys. It's a bad move. Get the cursor. There we go. There we go. We did it. Okay. Where were we? We were here. So that's, well, let's actually find it. Don't be sloppy. So that's about peak reach back. And your foot is 4 inches off the ground. So pop quiz. Where should your foot be in relation to peak reach back? Think about it for a second. We know this is wrong because I paused you. A lot of people say it's when your foot hits the ground, you should be at peak reach back. That's kind of correct. But I checked that looking at a lot of footage of Drew Gibson, because he's kind of like the poster child for very, very, very pretty form and effortless distance. Not that there aren't other people that would qualify as that also, but Drew is just a personal favorite for me, and I think a lot of other coaches too. But he very clearly, if you clicky pausey method him to death, his toe is on the ground and his elbow is still bent and he's still extending. He doesn't hit full extension. Like, he kind of doesn't hit full extension, full stop. His kinetic chain starts pulling his hips forward before he maxes out. But the jerk forward happens when his heel hits the ground, not his toe. So he's even later on the peak reach back than most people. Probably even more so than most pros. Like, I think that's why he's so explosive, is because he's getting a lot of elastic energy out of the muscles and tendons in his arm. So that can help a lot. Another problem with the way you're doing it, you are mitigating this very well. It does not appear to be a problem for you, but a lot of people, because of this 4-inch distance here, they'll reach back on this line because their brain is thinking the disc is going to go exactly opposite that, which it would if they didn't then tip over and close this space. So when this space closes, your torso lean tips forward a little bit, which adjusts this angle by the same amount as that gap. So this is partly a footwork issue, that the more glidey you can make your footwork, the less this will happen, the less you'll have that little slap factor here. But you happen to do a pretty good job of pulling through on the right line. So, like, you're adjusting your pull through to compensate for the tip from your foot. But it's better to not have any tip in your foot. And there's two ways to do that: making your footwork more glidey and timing your reach back so that when the heel hits is when your reach back peaks. Then there's no time for anything to change, right? Your brace is hitting, your hip is hitting, your hip is moving the shoulders are moving the arm, and you weren't at full reach back for longer than a microsecond, right? If you look at footage of Drew, or really anyone who's very good, they don't spend any time at full reach back. And as beginners, we often spend a lot of time at full reach back. You really want to bounce off of the reach back, not hang out there. So that's early reach back, and don't hang out at maximum reach back. So this is a perfect frame here. Oh goodness, hotkeys. get my cursor out of that text field. That's screwing me up. Okay. So let's get back to your pocket. So this is where like the sun starts to screw me up a bit because your shoulder turns into a building, but I think we can still see it. So your shoulder here, just outline it. You're shrugging. Super common in beginning and intermediate players. I still struggle with this a lot in my personal throw, but your front shoulder is shrugged up more than your rear shoulder. Let's make sure that that actually matters and you're not throwing a giant hyzer. I don't think you are. Queuing up flat. Okay, so it's a little bit of a hyzer, but you're still shrugging a decent amount. Right, so hopefully you can see that. Again, the sun is a thing. But the shrugging is indicative of a mental block that we all have, that our brain thinks that we need to throw the disc with our arm. So think about that for a second. Take that idea, crumple it up into a little piece of paper, and throw it away. We're not throwing with our arm, right? The name of my YouTube channel is Trebuchet Disc Golf for a very important reason. We're using our footwork and our weight shift to build a siege weapon. We are not throwing a thing with our arm. That idea is like in our brains from being little kids and throwing balls and stuff, and it's really hard to make it go away. But where it comes out is this tension in the shoulder that just hoses everything. Like the job of the shoulder in a backhand throw is really kind of to just stay out of the way. Like the shoulder's job is to make sure that the arm stays connected to the torso and doesn't fall off. It doesn't really have to do a whole lot more than that to get to 350, 400. There is an advanced maneuver where you can make more space in your pocket by pushing your shoulder socket forward. So if you like stand against a wall, put both of your hands up on the sides of your head and touch your elbows to the wall, and then take like a 3-4 inch step backwards, and then make one elbow still touch the wall by reaching your shoulder socket forward without moving your spine at all. That's kind of the motion there. I wouldn't necessarily worry about this yet, but just conceptually you should be aware that that's a thing that you can do. That can help stop the shrugging, but it is activating a different set of muscles in your shoulder, which is kind of harder. But all you need to do is do a lot of Josh from Overthrow has a very good drill that I believe he adapted from the elephant walk thing that what's his name, Seabass does. That drill is great. He talks about weight shift a lot, and he just has you swing your arm back and forth a bunch and really try to feel that weight. There's lots of good hammer swing drills that people have. Aceit Disc Golf, who's also worked with Seabass, has a pretty in-depth series on hammer swinging stuff, and I think Danny Lindahl from Dynamic Discs has some good stuff too. So those are all good drills to look at if you like drills and videos, which I think you do. So check all those out if you haven't already. If you have checked them out and you haven't done the things, like actually get a hammer and do the things. Medicine balls also work pretty good. So anyways, the point is the hula drill will help you learn how to keep your shoulders down. It's a lot of disc golf stuff is about just staying loose and making space for your power pocket and disc and your shoulders. That's a cue that I keep coming back to a lot, is making space, specifically for power pocket stuff. So the shrugging is hurting you. We can go in more into that if you want to, but hopefully that's a good primer. So then your power pocket, kind of hard to see for sure because the backlit thing. Like it looks okay-ish, but the shrug is bad, and then here like you're not deep enough. So why is that happening? Because you're shouldering too much. You're accelerating at the shoulder, like you're leaning your whole body, like your shoulder's too pointy, right? So you're putting too much energy that way instead of just staying centered here and giving the disc time to move. So you're not giving the disc time to curl into the power pocket as much as we want it to. So your arm bone is here and your other arm bone is here, and I'd rather see your arm bone lower and then this one get tighter into your chest. So your elbow isn't hinging enough. You're not getting into a deep enough bend in your elbow. And that's not because you're not moving your arm to the right spot. Your arm shouldn't be moving. Your arm should be relatively loose. It's a matter of timing and how much you support the upper arm with the muscles of the shoulders, the stabilizers in the shoulder. So relax the shoulder. Easy to say, impossible to do. And use the shoulder to support the elbow so it doesn't collapse into the chest. You're not doing that, but you're doing the opposite and not giving the disc time to coil into your power pocket. So standstills are the way to do that, and standstill isn't really a good term. So throws where you're not moving your feet, because there's a lot of stuff moving, like your hips should be moving a lot in a standstill. Video on standstills to come out later. Got some ideas on that I'm working on. So you're shrugging, your power pocket is not amazing. It's not horrible, but it could be tighter. I think that's a lot of the magic comes from getting into a deep coil and then having it come out correctly, which is a whole other issue. But let's move on. So your offhand is also doing things, but it could be doing them better. So, yeah, okay. So you're not super bad, but you're just where you're queuing up. Your offhand is going super behind you and it's staying low. So this tells me that whether or not you are thinking this or not, your body is thinking that this weight needs to come around in order to make things spin faster. I just spent a decent amount of time arguing with Chris Taylor, who is a lovely gentleman on here who actually has motion capture data on a lot of the top level pros. So he is a wizard and knows things that the rest of us just guess about, because he has some really cool models on a screen and a bunch of numbers next to them that allow him to check his theories much quicker than the rest of us can. He's a great guy. He spent a lot of time arguing with me about things that I don't understand. Bless his heart. But he just keyed me into this concept that the offhand, all it needs to do is go from wide to narrow while you're rotating. So it's exactly like the ice skater thing, right? They cue up rotation and then they pull their arms in to speed up. That's all your arm ever needs to do. So you can do it like Drew Gibson. You can cue up here and then shoot it down your front leg and have it do a swim move back. Or if you want to be super cool, you can do it like Garrett Gurthie or Eric Oakley and shoot that son of a bee up to the sky and then swing it all the way down to wherever you want to, as long as it's going from here to there while you're rotating forward. So that'll just pull in and make your rotation happen faster. The Drew Gibson one is really easy to do. The Garrett Gurthie one is super impossible to do. I haven't figured it out yet. But with Chris's help, maybe I can, now that I understand what the heck is going on. But another person who's actually good to emulate is Paul Macbeth. He puts his arm right about here, tenses it up with a fist, and then swings it into his side. I feel like it's a lot easier to get the timing with that. You can kind of just follow the knee turning in on that one. But check him out if you want to. So point being, your offhand should be making very calculated movements the whole time. And yours is kind of pulling around, but it's not getting tight. There's still airspace between your elbow and your side. Right there. So this, not ideal. Right, we want it to be, boom, like tucked against your side, absolutely no airspace at all. Okay, so that's your offhand. Now, kind of not so low-hanging fruit stuff. This is like, this stuff isn't in the videos, or if it is, it's not in the videos well enough. So that little, okay, so we're going to talk about hips and legs in general. So watch your, well, where to start. This doesn't work. You've lowered, this leg is set up as a shock absorber. This is not where we want to be absorbing shock. This is where we want to be continuing with forward momentum and driving into forward momentum. So remember I said I want this foot at 90 degrees because I want you on the ball of the foot, and I don't want your knee pointed backwards. I want your knee pointed forwards. So I want to see a little bit of that, where your knee is dipped in. And then I want to see the same thing in the front. I want to see your toes at 90, or actually, honestly, probably a little bit behind 90. It feels like it's a lot easier to get the motion correctly the more you wiggle your toe backwards. So 90, knee dip in. And then in the front, you actually want to dip your knee in too. So the toe being back and the knee being in will mean that your hip stays closed. So your hip crease in the front will be closed. There won't be a lot of space between it. It won't be open. But just watch the motion of your front leg here. I'll back you up a little bit. So you're kind of closed, and then you're opening up as you set the foot down. That is the biggest problem present. Like that opening, it brings the rear hip with it, and now you're in that locked out position. So what you've done is you've found a position that feels powerful to your brain, kind of, but it's stopped your hips from doing any of the things they need to do. So you need this foot turned in, you need this foot turned in, and you probably need more offset, honestly, for how big your leg span is. So where would I want to see your foot? If your ball of your foot is there, I want you to shorten up a little bit, and I probably want your front foot like here. So you got to get this one back closer to the edge of the T-pad so that you can have this one still on the T-pad. So you need a pretty sizable offset here. The reasoning is that more than anything, you really need this rear leg to go behind you, which it won't do unless you have enough offset. So your follow through, you have a big old toe drive, but your leg kind of gets stuck. Like it starts going left immediately. It kind of bumps into your other leg, or bumps into your hips, really. And you're like, look at the level of your hips here. They're down, and they immediately start going up. So you're not sticking behind your brace. Like, look at footage of Drew, because his brace is like picture perfect. Once that foot comes down, and you're kind of rocking on your foot weird too, like you're setting down on the inside of your foot. There's nothing wrong with this. Like, some people do it. I don't think it's the easiest way to learn, right? Like, I think Simon sets his foot down flat all at once, but I think what Drew does is a lot easier. So you're setting down on the inside edge of your foot, and then rolling up to flat. So that force is going to continue, right? You rolled in pressure into the outside of this ankle. You're going to roll pressure on the outside of the knee, and your knee's going to move. See how your knee just keeps moving to the right, and then your hip comes up. The thing that Drew does is, like, I'm not sure it's safe for most of us, but you can get to that motion. You can approximate that motion in a way that's not as gnarly on your knee as what he does. But the key to that is to softly rock up from your toe to your heel. So you're going to intentionally leave your heel pointed forwards. So your toe's going to set here. Your heel's going to be in the air above it. And then you're going to rock the weight into the heel. That'll also help establish your pivot on your heel a little better. So what does your pivot look like? Perfect. It's beautiful. Don't change a thing. But so back to the rear leg. Your leg just goes forward a little bit, and then because it doesn't have anywhere to go, your hips pop up, right? Let's see if I can draw that for you a little bit. I'll just find like the lowest point of your hips. So there, you just planted. Your hips are like, I'll just go like on the line on your sweatshirt. Hopefully that'll work. So you come through, and then now they're already coming up, and they come up. So you lost 4 inches, and that's gonna happen at some point. Like, physics is still a thing, but you're still rotating your hips here. So your hips, because you're coming into this toes open stance, your hips are moving, your hips are moving, your hips are moving, they're rolling forward. Now they're coming up and rolling forward. And if you look at Drew, what you'll see is he actually counter twists until he's planting. And then like right here, his hips will just stay there because his brace is so efficient that it locks his front foot. Should leave that there. So it locks him right there, and then all of his hip rotation, bam, happens right there. See how much drift you have forward? Drew doesn't have that. The power comes from all of the hip rotation happening in this one singular spot, which is predicated entirely on having a very solid brace that stops your front hip in place and gives the rear hip time to come around. So this position that your knee ends up in, if you were actually on the ball of your foot and not on your toe because you didn't pop up so much out of your hips, that position is what we want. But we want it queued up from the beginning. Right, so even here you've already messed up your leg. It's too late. There is no fixing this throw. Unless you go into full eagle mode and like step to here, and that gives you time to fix it. But if you keep this foot a flat 90, then your knee can dip in. So you'll have your knee will be neutral at least. Your kneecap will be pointed this way instead of pointed backwards. It doesn't quite get this far, like it ends up there, but you need time to move it to where it's pointed in, is the point. So you've got the motion, but see how your ankle flexes? Like your knee's coming in the right spot, but your toe is pointed too far back, so you bend you collapse your ankle in, and that's why you toe drag, is because your leg is in the wrong position. So you shouldn't have any toe drag at all. If you offset enough, like if you offset over here and you keep that foot flat, by the time you plant, your foot will scoop clean off of the ground. We might have to get into off-axis tilt stuff to get there, but we'll save that for next time. But you want your leg to do this really cute scoop thing. Look at any footage of Drew Gibson for that. So that your toe lifts straight up off the ground and the leg immediately goes behind you. If you have enough offset, that will happen on its own. You can run one leg drills like Loop Ghost does them to make sure you have this motion correct. Part of that drill is getting your tilt, your off-axis tilt, to be counterbalanced by your rear leg. So super quick crash course on this because I'm already probably at like half an hour or some silly thing. This is your plant leg. Your spine goes here on this angle. It is for some reason way longer than your leg. The one leg drill is all about getting your trailing leg to match that angle. I can draw this cleaner. So this is your spine, this is your trailing leg, and this is your standing leg. You basically throw from here. So the whole idea is that you're spinning around this axis, and the rear leg being the counterweight is the whole goal. Then you want to end up in this position after you brace, while you brace. So your leg slides behind you and ends up there, countering the forward lean of your torso. So that's the 201 level class. We get into that more if all of this stuff makes sense so far. But the whole point of all of that garbage is you want to end up in this position where your knees are together. Very difficult to do. Fixing that foot is key. Having enough offset is key, and shifting with your glute pointed forward and your heel pointed forward is another key too. So you really want to coil into that rear hip crease. There's a great thread on Disc Golf Form Review that's talking all about that. Seabass points it out all the time. I looked at it a lot of times before I actually watched the videos, because some of them are videos of golfers. And I was like, ball golf, whatever, that doesn't matter. But the mechanics are exactly the same. So the first video on that thread is kind of where the thread gets its name. I do not like the name linguistically. It's called weight shift from behind you. Like, who could ever parse that correctly and know what it means? But all it is that when you shift your weight forward, you need to kind of have your bum forward. It'd be shifting a little bit backwards. So you're shifting towards your backside when you step forward. Very confusing linguistically. Check out the thread. It makes sense, I promise. Yeah, that's all I had. So my last note was like the hip slip going into the brace, which is just that your hips continue to move forward the whole time at a steady pace, instead of your brace really hard stopping the front hip to give the rear hip time to spin around. So your hips just slip forward the whole time, and then you lift out of that knee a lot more than we want. All right, dude. So that's about all I got. Hopefully that's not too much. I don't have a timer. I should start running a timer. I do have a timer. 38 minutes. All right, it's a good run. So if you don't know everything by now, I don't know what to tell you. But please ask questions if any of that doesn't make sense. I'm happy to spend more time with you. Yeah, hope that helps. Ask questions.